Okay. Well, we're going to start off with some technical difficulties in the realms of a giant fat butt that is not mine in the way of the camera. And as many people have said, they prefer video. They mainly watch the videos to see Maui. Well, this is where we are. I suppose I'll just start with rambling and move on from there, and then eventually start building some Lego. I made a tweet today about how exhausting it is as a Maori in the diaspora to hear people say that they are proud of Maori or that they're lucky to have today or stuff like that. I suppose might as well just address this. If you're To'iri, Iwi, or Pakeha in Aotearoa, and for the record, as far as I'm concerned, using the term New Zealand is as big of a dog whistle as using the term Rhodesia, or referring to any number of places. Why are you in such a mood? You do not get to eat Lego Maui. I'm not paying another $1,000 to take you to the vet. And you don't enjoy going to the vet either. You do not like having your stomach pumped. We've established this, that we had an agreement. No more stomach pumps. Anyway, if you are not Pacifica or Tangata Whenua of Aotearoa, you don't get to be proud of anything to do with Te Ao Māori, the way of Maori, the way our language. You don't get to be proud of that. Because your grandparents tried to wipe it out. Like, you can argue that, oh, well, my grandparents are Greek, or my grandparents are, whatever. When they moved over in the 60s, they weren't actively trying. They didn't stop. The thing that ultimately broke the back of white supremacy in New Zealand a crack and allowed the treaty tribunal to be done was a lawsuit waged by Maori. No one helped. Fundamentally, individuals helped. Those individuals get to karimana. They get to have a place in the struggle. But in general, unless you whakapā to those few individuals who actually helped fight for, against the Crown in New Zealand, you don't get to be proud of anything. You don't get to identify with the struggle. You didn't move to New Zealand to help overthrow the Crown. You're a 10-pound pom who overstayed their visa, who is now upset that turns out they're retired and they can't get a pension because they're an illegal immigrant. And that is actually something that I love. A lot of English people retire in New Zealand to never formalise their status, and it turns out they're illegal immigrants who overstayed their visa. It makes the news every year. It's kind of hilarious. It's estimated, I think the estimations vary from 10,000 to 20,000 to, there's only like 3. And we all know it's more than 3 and closer to 20,000 than anything else. It's like, that's it. And so if you are not Maori, and you live on Aotearoa, you need to know the only thing internationally that people care about is everything to do with Maori. And I'll say that again slower for people. The only thing the rest of the world cares about that comes from New Zealand is Maori. Without the Maori, New Zealand is it's the fucking Isle of Wight with somehow worse weather. And we all know the international powerhouse the Isle of Wight is. Pakeha, you don't get to be proud of us because you tried to wipe us out. Your grandfather failed. You want to be proud of anything? Be proud of the fact that your grandfather was a failure. Go and do something to be proud of. And don't go and do an immersion course today and be proud of that, because all you're doing is pricing out Maori who can't afford to learn their own language at home because of all the Iwi that come in and take up the places. I'm of the opinion, for the record, that that language studies need to be provided free to Maori, and I don't mean the limited number of positions that are currently occupied. I mean, if a Maori rocks up to learn it through a third-party organisation, the Crown should pay it whatever it costs. If you go to a university and you decide, and you're a Maori, and you decide to study Te Reo, it should be free. And I mean, you should literally be able to walk off the building site in your stubbies and high-vis and have them go, oh, okay, cool, so you don't actually speak any Te Reo whatsoever, but you fuck up our Maori. Okay, cool, so we're going to start you off at the absolute beginning. And as long as you want to stick with the journey, they take you on that journey. And it's free. That is the absolute minimum the Crown owes to people. And if you disagree with me, that's cool, but please understand that you're a fucking racist. And that's kind of, yeah. That's where my head's at today. But just to make it perfect, we're going to be building a white unicorn. White fluff unicorn. Because people on Twitter voted for it. And I've just spent 6 minutes complaining about racists. Because that's the world in which we live. Okay, so no doubt this is going to be terrible. I've actually put down a board that is a different colour. Because this kit is pastel colours. And after the exciting fun that was... Ooh. Okay, I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. Oh god, it looks like Loz is doing that crappy Lego-based fucking... Get yourself an app, build it using the app. No, I don't think I will. Anyway, yeah, it's just exhausting. It's like using Maori flags or identifying, but like if you want to protest against the Crown in New Zealand and you're Pākehā, go find yourself a different flag. Don't use any Maori associated flags. Go fly the fucking Southern Cross. Go get yourself the battle standard of the Confederacy. Go fly that. Get yourself a Gadsden flag. Get yourself a black flag. Just a plain black flag. Hell, run your grandmother's G-string up a pole and fucking salute that. Like, your flag should represent you. The fact that white people want to tie their struggle to somebody else's struggle, to me just shows the fundamental I want to say invalidity, but it's not a real word. You know what, fuck it, it's a real word now. The invalidity of their own struggle. I know that sounds horrible and mean, and why are you picking on all these poor white people? It's not their fault, they're stupid. You know what, I don't care. I'm sick and tired of being held to a higher standard by these assholes. So they can be held to a slightly higher standard. And I know they won't enjoy being held to a higher standard because, you know, white people be mediocrity. You know, like shit, you have a lifelong job to gleefully eradicate the Maori people and wipe out their culture. You have the full backing of the fucking of the British Empire, the largest and most powerful empire on earth at the time, and moreover, the dominant culture, where you were, and you still couldn't do it? Like, what's your excuse? Like, really, white people? What is the excuse? Like, I want to hear this. I think it'd be adorable. You know, why couldn't you successfully wipe out Maori when you'd stolen all their land? Stole all their land and then actively dispossessed them. How come you couldn't wipe out their fucking culture? How come you maybe managed to kill, depending on who you read and who you ask, up to 80% of them, you still weren't able to finish the job? Like, come on. What's your excuse? Were you get bored? Couldn't sleep with the screams in your ears? Anyway, now I'm just being an arsehole. But, yeah, this is a mad chef complaints while building Lego. And as you can see, I'm kind of salty. I don't even really want to be this salty about this shit. Like, it's just exhausting to have someone stand up and say, my Greek immigrant dad is involved in a total immersion course in Te Reo, and he's so proud of it. I'm like, you stole that. Cool, that spot that you're in, Greek immigrant, Um, that's stolen. There is a Tangata Whenua who cannot be in that spot because you are there. So that's how it's. I'm going to have to take off my kimono because it's hot and adjust the fan because it's blowing the wrong direction. I can't have it up too hard, otherwise it blows into the microphone and then you can't hear anything but whistling. It's like, why can't we hear the whistling instead? Be much nicer than listening to you complain. Yeah, I get it. Like, this stuff is exhausting. But imagine how much more exhausting it is when it is what you inherited from your parents. The fight, the struggle, the never ever ending. Like, imagine how exhausting that must be. I mean, it's okay, you don't actually have to imagine it. Like, it's... So, put that there. Okie dokie. It's slowly becoming clear what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Once again, the instructions are multi-layered. You know what, if you actually hate yourself a lot, I can't recommend these kits enough. They really are profoundly... I don't know, maybe I'm just an idiot. But they are profoundly counterintuitive. And so you really got to stop, figure out what you're doing, and your next move from there. Especially since we're dealing with multiple layers. To build the first layer, we're dealing with multiple layers in a single hit. And it just makes it a little bit more exciting. And by a little bit more exciting, I mean please make it stop. I'll be good, I promise. I mean, I won't be good. Sorry, you have to find out this way. That is a lie. I will not be well behaved. I will not be nice. I will not play well with others. That was actually on one of my report cards. I kid you not. Does not play well with others. I've told people that. A lot of people have a bit of a giggle and go, "It's so funny." I'm like, yeah. I don't mean it as a joke. Like, they actually put on a report card, does not play well with others. Yeah, the joke is we find out 32 years later that the Tangata in question is autistic, and so does not play well with others, may mean is sick and tired of putting up with other people's bullshit. But the fact is, I know people love making that joke about the whole, it doesn't play well with others. And it's like, yeah, it's a fun... I'm not joking. I'm not trying to make a fun joke. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, it looks like a 3, a 3, and a 3 keel. And also know that I've kind of... do tend to upset people when I say things like that. Like, I don't really necessarily want to pick fights with people. I don't actually subtweet people on Twitter in any way, shape or form. It never actually... It's not because I've got some sort of holier-than-thou moral... It straight up doesn't occur to me that that's a thing I can do. It's like, do you know that you could actually just say this about someone without actually saying to them? I'm like, but I could just march over to them and say, "Oi, dickhead, I think you're a wanker." And then, then they know. And it turns out that that's not actually how most people operate. And I get to sit there and go, huh, why not? Why don't you just tell people? Show the contempt you feel. As my English teacher once said. She didn't actually say it was marvellous, to be honest. She was just a sarcastic monster. She was like, you just tell people the contempt you feel, don't you? You just come out and say it. And I thought we were supposed to be honest in this. And it turns out that when people ask you to be honest, they don't actually want you to be honest. Which is a small problem when, once again, you're dealing with someone who's autistic. because you really need to just put that right out there, and to make it extra fun. For me, the ADHD means I get very bored of people's bullshit very quickly. So there's this kind of whole wonderful thing where it's like, I know I have to pay attention and I have to figure out what you're doing so I can survive. But I'm also bored now and sick and tired of dealing with you, so I'm just going to fuck off. And if I can't fuck off physically, I'm going to fuck off mentally. And then I proceed to fuck right off because, well, you're boring me and I can't do things that are boring. I would sooner just rather cut chunks out of myself with a sharp piece of steel. That's not a thing you should tell people, for the record. Even if that's how people make you feel, you can't tell them that. That is right. They appear to be getting better at translating these destructions, for better or worse. They appear to be developing a superpower. You heard it here first. Building bizarre off-branded Lego will give you a superpower. You can quote me on that. I am a Doctor of Divinity and a Reverend after all, and if you can't trust somebody with those qualifications, who can you trust? You know, like a real doctor? That doesn't sound very likely. I mean, a real doctor's is gonna be able to give you drugs, and I can't give you drugs, and that obviously makes me the more moral choice when it comes to judging and building your world around. See, that was a very interesting random sidebar to back when I used to tell people I was better than Jesus because you could just ask me and I would tell you. That was a thing I used to do, particularly when people had discovered that, wait, you study like philosophy and stuff, so what's like the best philosophy to have? I'm like, just do whatever I say. What? I'm like, well, I'm better than Jesus. You can ring me up and ask me. I'll tell you. Wait, no, you're not God. You can't. I'm like, well, it's kind of the best. Without putting too fine a point on it, if you're talking about building a philosophical system, a system of morality in which okay, I think I've got this figured out. We'll all know if it turns out that I'm missing parts at the end that I didn't have it all figured out. And this was just a horrible, horrible mistake. By then I will have forgotten exactly where I made the mistake, and you'll all furiously type into the comments exactly where I made the mistake, and I will cheerfully ignore them because I honestly don't read the comments. Not because I don't feel there's anything for me to learn from the comments, it's just that I find the whole process of making these videos so over the top, intimidating and difficult that I basically just shut down. Like there's currently, screw it, you guys can come behind the veil and see the magic as it works. I'm currently doing this on a PC, right? So there is a screen that is showing what is being recorded on a webcam. I can't see it, I refuse to look at it. I check the first 30 seconds of the video for sound and just run with that because I can't handle hearing my own voice. I can't stand looking at myself. And yes, these are problems that I should probably get around to dealing with, but there's a lot of stuff I'm dealing with in therapy. And honestly, me being uncomfortable on camera is not a huge problem that we need to address, now. So we'll just push that to the back of the bus and, it'll resolve itself or it won't. And we're all kind of just quietly hoping it'll resolve itself. And then we can all live happily ever after. I do find it funny that a lot of my co-workers freak out at the idea of me having a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream, or one of the people I work with mentioned my Twitter. She was like, "Oh, how many followers have you got?" I'm like, "I had 2,000 something, 2,500." And she was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "What?" that's huge. I'm like, probably. Like, I don't know. I shitpost. I tell you, I hold a microphone up to the stream of consciousness and just let it all dribble out. And that appears to be a niche that the world wants filled. And so I fill it. This is what we're up to right now. I believe we are building the head. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're building the head. I would look ahead, but I'm kind of worried that if I look ahead, I'll get discouraged and I will stop. Kind of, as dumb as it sounds, I'm very aware of my own faults and failings. Partly because I underwent some training in my youth that required you to be aware of your faults and failings, because you cannot achieve maximum effort unless you know exactly how you will fall apart and break. So, yeah. And then what you do is, as part of that, once you've figured out exactly how and where you will break, you figure out ways to compensate, to stop before you hit that breaking point, to, punch out. Or, at the end of the day, sometimes there's nothing to do but, just fucking hold on and ride. And once again, that's welcome to the world. It doesn't make me better than other people. I don't think it does at any rate. It just makes me different. I feel that way about pretty much everything about myself. That I'm not better, I'm just different. I'm different in ways that are hard to explain and hard for most people to understand. And I get that, and it's cool. I mean, it has to be. It's not like I can actually change this shit. It's like that old bit about you'll be surprised what you can get used to when you don't have a choice. If you're woken up every day by being kicked in the head, pretty soon you just get used to it and you're just like, what? 6:30. I normally get kicked in the head at 6. I wonder if everything's alright with old Dave the head kicker. I'll be feeling alright. Maybe I should go check on him. And some people will feel that it's monstrous, etc., etc., etc. One, we're talking about a metaphor here. And two, well, maybe the world in which we live isn't actually a wonderful the world in which we live is not always a magical and beautiful place. It's always magical. I ardently believe that the world is always magical. If the world that you find yourself isn't magical, what are you doing? I do occasionally accuse it of being a veil of tears and sorrow, but at the end of the day, it's just another 24 hours gone. No, at the end of the day, the world can be. Don't want to start forcing people here to. Oh, hello. No, we're good. Maybe are we good? 5 watts. What have you done? What have you done? Right. That's what you've done. God, just when you think you can trust somebody. Can't even read simple instructions. Speaking of simple instructions, one thing I looked into in my misspent youth was the possibility of driving across Russia. Topical now, I know. Driving from Vladivostok to Europe. Because that was whatever to do that for. It's a very long way. And what will you do? I'm like, I don't know. Seems like a thing that somebody would do. It occurs to me that I'm somebody. Maybe I should do this thing. Right. Anywho, what's it? It was a thing that I thought about doing. And one of the things I looked into was the type of vehicle you use. And it turns out that Ural trucks, the service manual is available as a comic book. As in, you can service the entire book, or the entire vehicle, using a manual that has zero words and nothing but comic pictures. And I discovered there was an interesting reason behind it. It's not like initially I thought low literacy rates, well, you got to get around it somehow. But it turns out it's slightly more complicated than that. It's actually higher literacy rates tied to regional dialects. Yeah, everyone likes to talk about this shit. Basically, what it was when you have an empire, you have a nation as big as the Russians. You will have people speaking various dialects of the language in different parts of the country. Now, this is not a major problem before the revolution because, Jesus Christ, the Russians were still using a archaic measurement system that used lines, for fuck's sake, which was almost but not quite 100 meters, but it was called the lines and arshins, and it was really fucking confusing. And so everyone, speaking, having difference of speaking didn't really matter, and having a written language that included, because Russians did actually include these little eccentricities, wasn't that big of a deal when you had so when you've got very few people that are literate and very few people that are travelling large distances, basically, only the nobility are travelling large distances, only the nobility have to be are literate. It doesn't matter if the spelling's all fucked up and weird, because it will be, either everyone will be writing in formal, what's the word I'm looking for? Formal high court language, or they won't. Or they'll be using their dialect. They will be using their natty dialogue. So that'd be 3 or 4. That's a 4. They'll use their dialogue as either a secret language amongst them and their conspirators, or they will be, or it will be accepted as a local variation thereof. And that's pretty much what happened. Fast forward to when literacy starts spreading like wildfire under the post-revolution, and you've got some major problems. And the way an organisation like the military tends to deal with confusion like this is you just go, hey diddle diddle, straight up the middle. And in this case, they just went with the extremely simple, we are going to have people using, and once again, when you're fundamentally teaching people how to read and write in a written manner, this is not a huge, complicated, vicious deal to deal with. You just teach people to spell the words the way they say them, and you drive on. Because like I said, you're trying to do a literacy program here. We got bigger shit to worry about than exactly how, people's spellings to start with, until they become rusted on, and then it's a problem. And so a lot of manuals for semi-technical things, and I say semi-technical not to disparage Soviet engineering, but because fundamentally something like maintaining a vehicle, the ease of maintenance is generally a decision made by a person that will 100% never have to maintain it. It boils down to decisions made by the engineer that has designed the vehicle rather than, the mechanic who's doing it. Mechanic follows the service manual. The service manual says, do this, you do that. And to do otherwise is to court disaster, because the vehicle probably isn't going to play nice with you randomly removing bits. So they 100% simplified the way the rules are put together. There we go. Most overhead. Okay, so now we're putting together a bunch of confusing green bits. This pastel green, it is pustule. I'm not sure if this is going to come up really well because I'm using a potato camera. Anyway, compare it to the white, just to show the pastel once again. Look, once I put it together, I'll take a picture of it and you'll see what I'm talking about. But the thing I'm trying to talk about is that it is a fairly unpleasant looking colour. I don't want to say pustule because that will turn people off and make them feel ill, but it is that kind of... it is very reminiscent of a infection of a semi-serious nature. So that goes there, then we want someone else to make this video so I don't have to. But that's not going to happen. No, like I've mentioned before, I find these videos semi-relaxing. The flooding, the world is currently a chaotic shitstorm at the moment. The place in which I live has flooded. And it is raining again today, with the threat of a major storm and more flooding to come. And so that's how it's going to work. Anyway, needless to say, excitingly for this stuff, the bags aren't numbered, so it's a little bit more difficult to put together than the Lego. I'm not sure if you can hear the rain starting to come down, but it's starting to come down. The temperature is still sitting at about 35 degrees. Like, it is dramatically unpleasant. It is a dramatically unpleasant day. Even by the sliding scale that we used to judge days in Brisbane, it is unpleasant. And that's a joke brought to you by Local Humour. I kind of wish I had something more positive to say. It's been a hell of a day. Like I said, do I even want to blame these Iwi people for... kind of do, because don't I? Okay. Okie dokie. The instructions at the moment are currently being clear as mud. Building 3 pieces, 2 pieces to be put together in a 3rd step. But, yeah. You thought you weren't having fun before. And that is rain coming down on my tin roof. It is coming down like a son of a bitch. almost relaxing, the sound I mean. I realise some people don't like storms, but wait, what? I am so goddamn confused right now. Okay. Let's put this son of a bit back there. How about comfortable? Okie dokie. Oh man. I hope you appreciate just the level of insanity of these instructions. I know they don't make a lot of sense to you. But I'm trying to follow them, so I have to make this bit. That bit has to be made so I can fit on that. And for those that are wondering what Tamao is doing, since he does not like the rain, it does not like storms, he's currently clawing at my feet for comfort, I hope. Like I said, he does not like storms, so he'll be staying close to me through this calm storm. And then he will saunter off as if he was not worried in any way, shape or form. Because that's just how we do in this house. I mean, I get his point, but I imagine that a storm for a small cat is a particularly deep and dark nightmare. Far be it from me to mock him for it. But yeah, it's just back to the topic at hand, complaining about white people. Why even bother, bro? It's not like they're gonna change. That's the real bit of it. It's just exhausting. You just hear the same story. It doesn't matter whereabouts in the world your friends are based. Like, you kind of just keep hearing the same... Wait, that's not a piece. Just keep hearing the same story about white people. This is what a white person did. Are we surprised the white person did this? No, not really. Are we disappointed? Kind of. It kind of feels like that's on us for having expectations. And there are... I don't want to say there's some good white people out there because that kind of... One, it diminishes the institutional nature of the power. Like, of course there's good white people out there. Does that negate the harm that the bad ones do? No. Does it mean we should forgive the bad ones? Should we allow the good ones to have a free pass because they're trying? And, bad people, there's bad actors amongst them, and the answer to that still feels like, well, no. Like,
shit's complicated. It's like I feel intensely frustrated
when non-Maori will bail up Maori and go, oh, just because I don't fuck up on Maori, does that mean I can't? And you put the person in the spot, they're like, oh, that doesn't mean that. That's part of me that's like, I want to stand up and say,
if you don't fuck up out of Maori, then yeah, 100%
you don't get to do whatever you just asked for permission to do.
And I don't care whether that's using a
Maori flag or, wanting some Tangata Whenua to accept your exhausting apology because you personally are not problematic, and your grandfather was one of the good ones too. And it's just like, yeah, I don't want to give you a free pass for that. Your guilt and your problems that you wish to foist upon me and mine, it's really just, it's more white supremacy. It's just, it's white, liberal white supremacy. I'm sorry that you feel bad because you have personally profited from the evils of your family. You thought about fixing that? Maybe it's an idea, if the idea really does upset and horrify you, have you thought about fixing it? This is a thing you could do. Put it out there. I'm not saying you have to, obviously. I'm not hopelessly naive. But rather than, getting all upset in your feels and demanding someone acknowledge that you are not one of the bad ones, could you try not to be one of the bad ones? Oh wait, skipped a step. Anyway, yeah, if any white people really do feel terrible and sit there and want to know what they can do to make the world a better place, etc., 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 it's like, well, just hold other white people accountable. Like, I'm not saying you have to go out there and beat them with a stick. Like, I'm also not saying that. Like, if you feel the need to go out there and beat old racist Uncle Horace with a stick because he's telling the same tired joke about it, rather than nervously laughing at it, if I'm telling it's not funny and that he's a racist piece of shit, putting it out there, it's a thing you could do. Yeah, I don't mind. Pretty sure if we have like a little quiet chat around the Damate or wherever we find ourselves, we can all sit there and agree that, you beating the shit out of racist Uncle Horace is a good thing. Yeah, if you're so inclined. Like, don't feel that you have to beat the shit out of old racist Uncle Horace. I get it. Like, maybe you can inherit some money off him. Yeah, that doesn't make you a very shitty human being. You just put it out there. But, confront the problems that you find in your own world and believe that we're doing the same thing. Like, I caught a pretty serious amount of fire for saying at the beginning of the protests in Wellington that the only way that it really could have been solved is if the police had come down hard and fast on the protesters. And people are like, oh my god, there's Maoris there, how do we fix this? It's like, well, it's a very old term called kaupapa, traitor, or rather the people that fight for the crown. My unpopular opinion, being a kaupapa is worse than anything you can be called. Like, okay, so what have we done? It does feel like a bit of what have we done.
22, 3.
It's okay. I figured it out. I'm not a complete idiot. Some parts are missing. No, I never get sick of that joke. Yes, I have the emotional age of 17. Thank you. I'd say it's a constant struggle, but I don't really know any other way. So, maybe it isn't a constant struggle. Maybe it's just how things are. Okay, so... this turn over, we then have this... See, I've made another mistake. Scheiße. Okay, let's just do this the reverse way. Let's see if that makes anything easier. I'm just going to smash this into 1,000 pieces to vent my frustration. God damn it. It is all going horribly wrong. People suggested that, maybe you should build your Lego by gluing it together, and those people, I'm like, you sweet summer child. You have far too much faith in my abilities. Far too much faith in my abilities. Okay, fuck me, let's try and build this piece of shit again. Because it exploded in my hands, I'm not even sure. I'm not feeling particularly confident I even know how it goes back together. Fuck. Okay. Come on, what are you worried about? You pulled it apart, I'm sure you can put it back together. That doesn't look like it goes there. It goes like that. Okay, that can go like that. Sweet. So if we put that there, right, and that can go there, and that looks right. And then somehow oh man, this is something crazy is going on here. So that part definitely has to go in there. 100% lock it in, Eddie. Alright. I'm so confused right now. What have I done wrong? Apart from getting out of bed this morning. Right. Okay, let's try this a different way. That's not going to give me the same line, is it? I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I'm pulling it apart for shits and giggles. It's still like a whole rack too high. Well, if that's the case, maybe we just need to slightly modify a few things. Okay, now well that fits. And the question is, how wrong is that to have done? It feels like the answer to that is very wrong. Yeah, all that shit feels like it's one too high. Okie dokie, well, approaching the hour cutoff point and I still haven't finished the head, which is frustrating, so I kind of wanted to just have the head completely kicked off and be done with it. But I'll do the hour and be done because, yeah, it's raining, thunder's going on, which means I may lose power imminently, which, as much fun as that would be, I can't really risk having my computer go boom. Yep, I see what I've done. Right, and the final outer part is meant to be just keep pulling it apart and eventually I'll run out of parts and patience and we can call it a good. And once again, I kind of feel bad that today's discussion has been fairly negative, but sometimes the world is not a fun and exciting place filled with magic. Sometimes the world is just kind of shitty. And today it kind of feels like the world was a bit shitty. I just literally made the same mistake twice. Feels like a big yes. I think I see part of the problem right now. Oh, god damn it. That was... Okay. So, we've discovered the mistake, and the mistake which all other mistakes flow from. So if I replace this with this... Oh, actually, no, I don't think that wasn't a mistake, was it? Hang on, what we got? Let's follow this through logically. Did I mention I'm not very good at doing Lego?
This is probably why the idea of a vehicle that could be repaired by a maniac with a comic book kind of appealed to me. Not with me being a maniac that can read comic books. He said as he systematically fails to be able to follow comic book style instructions. Okay, so no, I am confused. I did have that right. God damn it. Or did I? Maybe I didn't. I don't even know anymore. The exhaustion is overwhelming. Okay, let's go back to just putting that piece back that I thought I didn't have to put back in. Alright. This just means I don't know what I'm doing in a very complicated manner. Oh, hang on. Oh, this kid is confusing me. I'm sure it'll work out in the end. What's the worst thing that happens? I failed to build a Lego kit. It's not like I'm gonna get... It's not like my life is gonna be cancelled because I suck at Lego. I mean, if that was a thing that could happen, I never would have made it this far. Right. Okay, screw it. Let's just charge on through. Okay, so... And excitingly, the rain has stopped. Stupid weather can't even commit. Right, that pretty much locks all that in. So we're just going to leave that alone now. Okay. I think the most important thing is to get near enough and then just happily drive on and pretend that near enough is good enough. Sometimes it is. Sometimes chasing perfection leaves you with absolutely nothing. And your best and only bet is to depressingly figure out when to cut your losses. depressing life advice. But it's true, like, you drive yourself insane chasing perfection. Is this person the perfect one for me? You know, am I truly happy? You know, and I think this sounds incredibly cynical and very, very dark. But I think if you're in a place where you're worrying about whether or not you're truly happy, you probably are truly happy. Like, it is a fundamental part of humanity to never really be satisfied with anything we fucking have. Like, and so, wait, what the fuck? This thing isn't mirrored? God damn it. Right, so I'll just pry that fucker off then. Okie dokie. Alright. Okay, everything else fits. That works for me. Like, I did actually have thoughts this morning that, you know what, I'll tell a funny story or something when I get on here. It'll be great. Some humour, liven things up a bit. And then, you know, today happens and you watch a video of some woman go, I was born here, how come I'm not allowed to use the flag of the Maori struggle? Respect them. And you hear her say, but it's a violent iwi, we have to go before they kill us. It's like, pick it. Either you respect Maori or you're afraid. You don't get to have it both ways. Just admit you're a fucking racist and get on with your life. Like, I promise you, crazy ass white people, no one but you cares that you're racist. Like, just, no one does. It's taken as read, you know? Like, you're gonna have to prove that you're not racist. And I realise that probably feels intensely unfair. And that desperately needs to be a thing that is changed yesterday, because you are not a racist, you are one of the good ones. It's like, okay, you're and everybody else. Right? It's like that whole bit about good cops. Like, you know, well, it's only a few bad cops. Oh, wow, really? So, where are all the good cops when the bad cops are doing shit? Like, are they off buying fucking ice cream or something? Like, you know, when racist legislation is being passed, well, you know, like, fuck it, let's be topical. Transphobic legislation or any sort of bigotry. Like, you know, all these fucking white, cisgender, heteronormative side people stand up and go, it's not us, we're the good ones, It's like, where the fuck are you when the bad ones are doing all this shit? Like, I know that seems awfully confrontational, it seems like a bit of a piss take, but I mean it honestly, like, where the fuck are you? Like, if there are so many good white people out there fighting the good fight, how come the bad ones keep getting in charge? Like, are you all at the beach when you're meant to be voting? Like, and don't... I know someone is going to play the disenfranchised white dude card. And I'm like, okay, cool. You're disenfranchised. Sweet. Yeah. Story time with Tia Tangaroa. The reason I'm not in New Zealand and the reason that my te reo is absolutely pathetic is because we were forced to leave New Zealand. Dad was threatened with being arrested because Mum had a nervous breakdown after having kids, and she'd been blacklisted by the district health board because she invited Dad's mates' girlfriends, Pacifica women, over to talk about Well, according to her, she had them over, one, because she was lonely, and two, because she was worried that, they were too busy, they were not taking... Mum was a paediatric nurse. She wanted to make sure Dad's friends' girlfriends, who were also pregnant at the time, that they had... they were talking to someone about pregnancy, that, they were getting information, not... according to her, she wasn't even trying to give good information. She just wanted to talk to them and share experiences. She was lonely. And that was reported to the district health board. And as a nurse, she was blacklisted, told that she'd never be able to work in New Zealand ever again, for the awesome crime of effectively being married to a Maori. Where are all the good... Where are all the good white people then? And so I ended up in foster care. My older sister ended up in foster care. My little sister nearly got adopted because of how pale she is. She's very red. And that's actually something that I think a lot of people don't want to sit with in New Zealand. But the racism was such that I ended up in foster care. My older sister ended up in foster care because we kind of are more identically Maori than my younger sister. My younger sister was nearly adopted. My grandparents had to step in to adopt her because they wouldn't release us to Dad's care, and Mum had been declared an unfit parent, so her parents flew over from Australia to adopt us, their own grandchildren, so we could be taken, so that my parents could attempt to get custody. And we flew back to Australia. And Dad didn't go to his court hearing for assaulting a police officer because when he was told, when he came home and his wife was missing. This is what you need. This is what he went through. He came home from work and the front door was open and his depressed wife was missing. Just put yourself in that position for a single solitary dark second. You know your partner is suffering from depression from having a kid, and you know it's hard. And you come home and she's missing. Your first thought is not, oh, I'm sure someone has come and taken her to safety. Dad freaked the fuck out because you would. If you're an honest human being, you will admit that if that happened to you, no, nothing, your wife is just missing. And that's what he came home to. One day at work, next day, where's my wife? And so he called the police in a state, and they'd actually sectioned Mum, put her in a mental institution themselves. And he was charged with assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. Because no one bothered to explain to him what was going on, because they didn't have to, because he's just some fucking Maori. And so that's a deeply unpleasant story, and, aren't we having fun exploring the repercussions thereof? But I fucked this up. Just the song of my people. Listen how I fucked it up. And yeah, so they did the only sane, rational, reasonable thing you could do in a situation like that, which was they took the kids and they ran. And in no way, shape, or form do I blame my parents for that decision. Like, let's be honest, what were they supposed to do? Like, just, you know, assume tra la 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 and, you know, just deal with the fact that their kids have been taken off them. And once again, I don't think my parents were the only people this ever happened to. You know, this is 1983 in New Zealand. Like, I'm willing to bet an awful lot of money that this was not even an isolated incident. You know. And yeah, so the sad fact is in New Zealand that if you were born white enough as a Maori, there was a very good chance that you would be stolen from your people, because white people could adopt Maoris, or white Maoris, and will breed them out. It's actually genocide. For those that are playing along with a copy of our home game, that actually fits the United Nations Declaration on Genocide. So once again, if you are playing along with a copy of our home game, that's 1983, New Zealand committing genocide, and actually being a ratifying member of the Declaration on Genocide. So, as much as it would be fun to give the New Zealand government, well, maybe they didn't know any better. Times have changed. No, at the time it was genocide. Now it's still genocide. Like, taking children away from their culture to be raised by another is actually part of the definition of genocide. And that is what the Crown did. And that's why white people don't get to be proud of anything Maori do. And, like, at this time, 1983, like, New Zealand was undergoing such wonderful things as, Springbok protests, where New Zealand was still supporting apartheid South Africa. Like, this is not mentioned enough. Like, this is the face of New Zealand that a lot of people really need to understand. Like, this is New Zealand. That level of racism, that is New Zealand. Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Does it make you feel a little sad and sick inside? That's New Zealand. Congratulations. If it makes you feel sick and sad inside, welcome to the race. And yeah, so when your people were doing that, in the 80s, you don't get to sit there and you don't get to co-opt any of this shit. Like, you don't get to sit there and say, oh, but, like, I really respect the Maori struggles and stuff like that. It's like, no, fuck off. You're the reason for the Maori struggles. You don't get to co-opt our people and our struggle. And I would put it to other Maori that do that you are a traitor to your tupuna. You betray your ancestors and the struggles they went through when you allow white people to co-opt the Maori struggles for their own white people bullshit. Like, fuck them. Yeah, I get it. It's lonely, hard, and ugly. And it's not fair that we have to fight for every fucking thing. But white people aren't your friends. It's like that bit in Finding Nemo. White people are food. They are not friends. White people, keep saying it with me, white people are food. They are not friends. Just keep saying that over and over again until it's drilled into your head. White people are food. They are not friends. I mean, don't get me wrong, you might have a pet cow or whatever, but, you're not necessarily going to be treating every single cow with the respect of old Daisy, the cow you grew up with as a kid. And yeah, I realise that's extremely reductive, and what a horrible thing to say. How dare you reduce all white people to being food? Like, you know, damn, that's culturally, that's a heck of an insult you're throwing around there, young man. I know. I know how big of an insult it is. I know that there is no worse thing a Maori can say than to you are nothing but fucking food. Like, I know that. I realise that's as big a transgression as there fucking is. Like, I understand that. And there are people out there who will be sitting there going, does this apply to me? And if you're wondering if I feel that way about you, chances are I probably don't. If you know me well enough to be sitting there and going, why being tarred with this brush? If you're just some random stranger on the internet, I 100% mean you. You know, let's be completely fair and reasonable about this. By being completely arbitrary. Not that there's anything wrong with being completely arbitrary. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to make these 8 little... I have to make 8 of these little guys. So, I'll make the 8 of these, and then I'm going to stop, because these are intensely fiddly and annoying, and I probably should have something to eat and a stretch. And go deal with stuff. But yeah, like, white people have their own struggles they can glorify, like, I don't know. God, what have white people ever struggled with? Oh, well, they could fly the flag that they flew when they had to deal with that time that a brown person walked past them, and they were really scared, but they heroically didn't cross to the other side of the street because that'd be racist. You know, they can use that battle flag. Or they could use the proud and noble flag that was flown over the any number of battles in which the British government showed up at dawn and proceeded to murder a bunch of women and children, usually in their beds. It's much easier to murder people in their beds, for the record. If you get there early enough that nobody's gotten out of bed yet, that is the best time to be starting your murdering. Just, you know, one professional to the rest of you. Don't be a fool and start talking about fair fights and all that. Fair fights are stupid. No. What you want to do is rock up while everybody's still asleep, chain the door shut, and burn the whole village down. That's the proper... Well, that's the Sandhurst manner. It's the old joke, guys. That being a joke, for people who aren't familiar with Sandhurst, as anything other than a supplier of dried foodstuffs. Sandhurst is actually I'm not sure if it's still there, but for a long time, the British Officer Corps was trained at a place called Sandhurst. The Australian version is Dundrein. And so there's a bit of a joke about doing things in the Sandhurst fashion, which is a dig at archaic and outmoded thinking that is more hidebound than insightful. Because, you know, there's no point complaining about things if you can't learn stuff. Learning stuff is fun-ish. How can I make 8 of these armed? It's about to start complaining that I can't make 8 when I only have 5 of one of the necessary pieces. These, I think, are the fluffy clouds that are going to get stuck on the side of the unicorn. I don't know why we're making them while the unicorn is so unfinished, but we are making them. Possibly so they can be put to one side so the cat can eat them. And then, of course, he will have to be rushed to the vet, who will look at me and go, what did that idiot eat this time? And I'll be like, Doc, I'm sorry. Go, that's okay. You're this month's car payment. And yeah, my vet actually makes jokes like that with me, mainly because I make jokes like that with them. I kind of find, if you want people to relax and realize you're not a demon when you stand 185 centimeters tall, and when you were young and extremely fit, you still weighed 120 kilos because you're descended from people that had to fight a long series of wars against genocide, and that does tend to lead towards a certain phenotype. you do need to figure out ways to make yourself appear to be less intimidating very, very quickly. Jokes work well, especially jokes at your own expense. It tends to relax people a hell of a lot more than just like a normal joke. If you try to tell a normal joke, in my experience, possibly because I'm autistic, it does tend to come across like you're trying to calm people down, and that tends to just freak people out more. You know, like if you're just minding your own business and this tiger came up and started, leaning on you and purring, it would probably freak you out a hell of a lot more if you're in the middle of nowhere, alone with said tiger, and it just wandered over and started purring and rubbing itself on you, than if it attempted to eat you. Because your expectation would be, oh shit, I'm in the wild, there's a tiger. And if the tiger's going to eat me, so shit, run, hide up a tree, and then the tiger comes over and starts showing you affection. You're like, oh shit, what do I do? Do I pat it? Is that going to make it angry? And is it going to eat me? That type of thing. Whereas if the tiger was to come over and roll onto its back and show you its belly, you would know instantly that that's a trap. You wouldn't even need a Colonel Akbar meme to get that particular one. But you know exactly where you stand with it. It's like that whole thing about smiling amongst people. Smiling, you having your hands far away from your body. They're kind of like universal gestures of like, come in peace, please don't be scared. Except you do have to, when you're in social circumstances, you do actually have to make a little bit more of an effort than just make gesture. People expect you to talk to them. And if you've got a self-depreciating sense of humour, people can deal with that much better than pretty much anything else. I have a feeling that if it's going to be people that are going to jump up and go, that's not necessarily true, studies show that. I'm like, oh, cool, studies show that. I'm basing this on my own meandering experience. I trust lived experience more than... Oh, actually, here's a classic fucking example. This is why I trust lived experience a shitload more than I trust theoretical academic knowledge, right? When I lived in Orange, I needed to fax some documents, in theory, to a lawyer in Connecticut dealing with a divorce. An international divorce, because shit's exciting. Anyway, this is where it gets absolutely hilarious. That was just one of the things I have to deal with. Dinner going to beep. Anyway, back to the exciting story that you'll all love and have a giggle about as I finish this last little fluffy bit. Needed me to fax stuff. Now, if you're in Australia in the 21st century, you'll be like, no one has a fucking fax machine, mate. You are fucked. And yeah, pretty much. I asked around if I knew, like maybe because the guy I was working for, maybe his dad had one. No one had a fucking fax machine. The post office and the library online said that they had one. Sweet, so I just go to the post office and no one in the post office actually knew how to use the fax machine. And I don't mean like, you've got to come in tomorrow because Greg's in. I mean, no one that worked at the post office in Orange when I was there knew how to use the fax machine. Like, they had it. In theory, you could pay for them to send or receive a fax, but no one who worked there full time actually knew how it worked. Like, how do you dial in a number for it? Like, if you ever worked with the fax machine, you know that it's not a super easy thing. Okay, we have now made 8 of these little guys. We have come this far on our head, and I'm going to call it quits there. Anyway, so just to round up the story with the fax machine, so I'm not sitting here dying for it. And the library fax machine was broken. It required some part. So I asked them when it was likely to be fixed. And the head of the library looked me in the eye and said, you're the first person that's wanted to use the fax machine in 5 years. It's been broken for 5 years. How soon do you think we are going to fix it? And I went, okay, so you're not going to fix it. She was like, yeah. Why would we? If you're the first person that's wanted to use it in 5 years, why would we fix it? That's perfectly sense. But on paper, and in theory, they had fax machines. I had access to fax machines. However, in practical terms,
there was no fax machines to be had for 500 kilometres. Needless to say, the American lawyer did not take that very well because his Google search, his Google foo, had shown that I was completely wrong. That's why I don't trust theoretical knowledge for the most part over practical matters. Because, so what? Like, at the end of the day, the person on the ground is going to be dealing with dealing with the reality, and the other person is not going to be. Anyway, thanks for hanging around. I will probably record another part of this tomorrow, see how much further we get. This is much slower going than the other unicorn. I don't really know why. It could just be that I suck. In fact, there's a very good chance that I suck. Anyway, yeah, catch you later.